The last time we saw Bobby Boucher, he decided to sign with the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. And thanks to Coach Klein, he had a ton of tackling fuel going forward throughout the season.
What's the matter with you, boy? You too stupid to do what your coach tells you?
No. No what?
But after a freshman season where Bobby was one of the best players in the entire Sun Belt Conference, he was able to lead his team into a game against Arizona State and Coach Red Bear, where this Bobby Boucher defense dominated throughout the second half, and ultimately they would end up winning the Bourbon Bowl. Bobby Boucher soon became one of the most talked about players in all of college football, leaving a lot of people impatient to see what the Waterboy might end up doing next. Which brings us to today, where it turns out that Coach Klein has a ton of offers to be a head coach at another school, but he knew the only way that he could also get Bobby Boucher to transfer is if Bobby would finally tell his mama about him playing football. And it was safe to say that initially she was not happy.
Foosball? You playing the foosball behind my back?
But after realizing how much money Bobby could make from NIL deals, soon mama was completely okay with it. But she encouraged Bobby and Coach Klein to go somewhere that was relatively close to home and find a place that could help Bobby be the best player that he could possibly be. So after Coach Klein had officially signed with his new college, Bobby Boucher decided to follow him immediately, and ultimately they would both end up signing with the Texas Longhorns. But now that Bobby Boucher is officially in Texas, unfortunately they don't have his number 9 available because they gave it out to a familiar face. Because Jonah Williams, one of the biggest two-sport athletes in the nation. Hey, I'm not gonna lie, bro, this looked nothing like Jonah Williams. This dude looked more like Baljeet from Phineas and Ferb than it looks like Jonah. By the way, Jonah Williams had number 9, so Bobby had to settle for a new number, and ultimately he decided to go with number 0. Now, as soon as fall camp hit, Coach Klein wanted Bobby to prove that he deserved to be the starting linebacker. The Texas Longhorns have a pretty great roster full of a lot of 5-star athletes, but at this point a lot of people consider Bobby Boucher to be a 6-star, which is exactly why he had no problem becoming the official starting linebacker for the Longhorns. But now that Texas was heading into their first game of the season, Coach Klein told Bobby that he was going to have him moving around the defense. He was going to put him out there at edge rusher because he felt like he could become one of, if not the best one in the nation. So now the Waterboy was looking forward to playing a new position on a new team as he was heading into his first game of the season against UTEP. Now on one of the first plays of the season, Coach Klein did put Bobby out there at edge rusher, and it didn't take long for some of his opponents to recognize him.
Hey, Waterboy, you fixing to tackle all of us? I asked you a question, dumbass.
Bobby Boucher was already making an impact for his new team, and the entire crowd was hyped because they were witnessing what could be the birth of a new Texas football legend. And soon Bobby was already helping to get his second sack of the day, putting an end to another UTEP drive, and it seems like that might become a theme for Bobby. Because soon they had UTEP backed up on their own 1.5-yard line, and Bobby Boucher was the first one there to help with the safety, combining for another sack on the night while putting some points up on the board, leading to a game that would ultimately end up 16-0 after halftime. And Texas pretty much had all the momentum at this point, especially after Bobby knocked the Sonic coins out this running back, forcing him to fumble, leading to a Longhorn recovery. And now it looks like Bobby has helped his new team come up with their first win of this season. They go on to beat UTEP 19-7, and it was mostly thanks to their defense, led by the Waterboy, who had 5 tackles for loss and 1.5 sacks. He would go on to earn an SEC Defensive Player of the Week in his first game as a Longhorn. And it's not too long after that where Bobby earns his first NIL deal of the season, so now he's able to send some of that money back home to mama. But you see, Bobby knows he has a lot more work to improve on because he has a long season ahead of him. And considering the Longhorns' first 2 weeks are supposed to be some of their easiest games, Bobby was looking forward to having another great performance in his next one, as Texas was set to face off against New Mexico. Now early on in this one, Bobby and his defense were swarming the ball carrier almost every play, coming up with multiple stops here in the first half against New Mexico State. And at one point they were getting so mad that they started talking crazy to Bobby.
We must be a little lost. It looks like we ended up in Retardville, USA.
Oh yeah, they shouldn't have said that to Bobby, because all that did was just give him some more tackling fuel, and he definitely used it on this next play, as he gets his first sack of the game to put an end to another New Mexico State drive. And at this point, the Waterboy and this defense were absolutely on fire. By the end of the second quarter, the Longhorns would be up 17-0, but this Texas defense was playing like they were still down 17, dropping the quarterback in the backfield for their 4th team sack of the night. And now Texas pretty much had all the momentum by the time the third quarter came around. Because in a game where the quarterback was just petrified to get sacked again by Bobby, He would end up throwing this ball up to the secondary where it would get picked off, giving the ball back to Texas with an already 3-possession lead, doing enough to come up with their second victory of the season, as the Longhorns went on to absolutely dominate New Mexico State 34-0, mostly due to another Bobby Boucher and Jonah Williams-led performance, both of which who had at least 4 tackles for loss, and Bobby ended up with 1.5 sacks. Now this was a great start to the season for this defense, but the offense was also putting in some work too, as another familiar name, Khalid Lockett, was already in the running to win a Heisman, along with at one point the #1 receiver in the country, Decorian Moore. Now at this point of the season, Coach Klein and the rest of the staff was extremely happy with what they were seeing from Bobby, but soon they were going to start needing a little more out of him, because at this point they were now going to start playing some tough games throughout the rest of their season. Luckily, their next one would be another game in front of the home crowd, as the Longhorns were now heading into a game against one of the best teams in all of the Big Ten, the Michigan Wolverines. Now in the first quarter of this one, Michigan, led by Bryce Underwood, was showing that they were definitely a better team than what Texas had faced over the past couple weeks, easily getting down the field towards the goal line on the first play of the game. And it was not too long after where Michigan was punching it across for a touchdown, putting them up by 7 before eventually Texas would tie it up. Now Michigan did a great job getting down the field again in the second quarter, but this time they were not able to complete the job, bringing us to the end of the half where Michigan now had the lead. But this Texas defense would start stepping up by snagging a pick in enemy territory. A big turnover for the Longhorns that now brings us to the fourth quarter, where they are up 14-10, and it seems like they have a lot of momentum on their side. Because despite the fact that Michigan has the ball deep in the red zone for the 3rd time in this game, they try to take a shot deep to the end zone here. Dang, bro, let me see. Well, it looks like it ended up incomplete, which now brings us to the final drive of the game. And with Michigan desperately needing to get back into field goal range, it was Bobby Boucher who was making it infinitely more difficult, as he bends around his left tackle and finds a way to bring Bryce Underwood down to the ground, putting them behind the sticks on a 4th down and 12. But on a play where Bryce Underwood was going for the win, he instead threw a pick, giving the Longhorns back the ball in the final moments of the game, and doing enough to officially put this one away, as Texas comes up with a narrow 14-13 victory. And at this point, with Bobby Boucher going for 6 tackles for loss, it became clear that he was now the leader of this defense. And the great thing about it is that he was making some real improvements to his game almost every single week. And a lot of fans felt like he had the chance to break the single-season sack record for Texas. But although Bobby already has 5 on the season, he knows that there's still a long way to go. And it wouldn't get any easier as Texas was now starting to have some games on the road, starting in their next one where Texas would face off against their first SEC opponent of the season, the University of Ole Miss. Now things were going pretty well early on for this Texas defense as Bobby Boucher helps combine for a sack, a big play that actually puts an end to Ole Miss's opening drive, bringing us to the second quarter where the Texas offense still has no points, but the defense is definitely doing their job, taking down the running back before they have a chance to move the sticks and giving the ball back to Texas where they would finally score their first points. And it seems like at this point Ole Miss was just not able to get anything going on offense. They even came out here and threw a pick right before half. And after halftime, they would once again be brought to another 3rd down. But backed up against their own goal line, they were definitely in danger of Bobby Boucher in this defense coming up with another sack, this time in the end zone for a safety, and it was safe to say that this definitely set the tone for the Longhorns. Because going forward throughout this game, Texas now had a 2-possession lead, and on defense, they were continuously forcing turnovers, coming up with a pick that allowed Texas to remain in control until late in the 4th quarter, where although Ole Miss was finally coming up with their first points of the game, at this point it was too little too late. Because thanks to this defense, Texas was coming up with a 9-7 victory, closing this one out against their first SEC opponent of the year thanks to Bobby Boucher and the rest of this defense. This squad looks like it could become one of the best units in the entire nation. But now at this point of the season, the Longhorns will be facing some big tests over the next few weeks. And Coach Klein lets Bobby know how important it is for him to stay on campus and work with the team. But he did reassure him that he'll go back home himself and check on Bobby's mama. Now Bobby didn't have too much time to think about this at the moment because he was going into his toughest game of the year, with Texas now heading into another road game against another SEC opponent, this time though against one of the top-ranked teams in the country, as the Longhorns were in enemy territory to face off against number 3 Alabama. Now on the first play of the game here against the Crimson Tide, Bobby Boucher had burst up the middle and brought the quarterback down for a sack. Man, Bobby hit the quarterback so hard the announcer thought something was wrong with him.
There's a lot of pain and shame in those eyes.
Friends, it's all over.
Wow, that is a disturbing image.
Either way, this defense was off to an incredible start after they got a stop here on 3rd down. But after the Texas offense had turned the ball over, they put the defense in a little bit of a predicament as they were allowing Alabama to move down the field. But they did get to a 3rd down and 4 where Bobby had jumped off sides, sacked the quarterback, and created a fumble, but obviously this was not going to count. Eventually, they let Alabama get to 3rd and goal, and they unfortunately let up a touchdown, putting this game at 7-0 early on, and after another Texas turnover, they're in bad position once again with the ball already on their side of the field. And although Bobby had obliterated this quarterback again, the Longhorns would also again be pushed to 3rd down, where this time they find a way to get a stop, bringing us to after halftime, where not only is this Texas offense failing to put up points, but this defense does not look like it's doing its job either, as this defense gets gashed up the middle for a 31-yard touchdown. An absolutely horrible play that pretty much gave Alabama all the momentum that they needed going forward. Because by the end of the 3rd quarter, even with Bobby Boucher coming up with his 2nd sack of the game, this would not be enough. And Texas would go on to take their first loss of the season, getting shut out against Bama 20-0. And Bobby was definitely not happy considering that the defense had did more than enough to keep the offense in it. But regardless of the loss, Bobby was still doing a great job staying focused in the classroom. He didn't want to risk the chance of Coach Red Boy U, who was now with Ohio State, to pull any crazy funny business and try to ruin his season. Because although the Longhorns were pretty good, they definitely were going to need Bobby, especially as they were going into another game against the top 10 team in the country. Now, for some reason, that Texas offense was turning the ball over a lot lately in their own territory. But they're lucky this defense early on only allowed 3 points, because eventually this game would be 7-3. And eventually Auburn does get back into field goal range, but this defense is trying to get a stop, and eventually they do, allowing Texas to take an 8-point lead here in the 3rd quarter, where this time in field goal range the Longhorns defense picks this pass off in the end zone. And this seems to pretty much give them complete control in this game, as by the 4th quarter they were up 21-6. And Bobby didn't really even have to do much today because his defense seriously stepped up, creating another turnover that was absolutely enough to put an end to this game. The Longhorns take this one 21-6, and they felt good about getting back on track against the top 10 team in the country. But Bobby felt even better about hearing from his girlfriend, Vicky Valancourt. She tells him that she's going to come visit her aunt in Austin. So she was hoping that she could see him too, but she also told him that Coach Klein was at his mama's house just the other day. Now, Bobby could swear that Coach Klein already visited Mama already, so he definitely thought that was a little weird, but he couldn't really think about it too much yet, because for now he had another big game coming up. This time against one of the biggest rivals in the history of Texas' program, as in the Red River Rivalry, the Longhorns are facing off against the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, early on in this one, for the first time in a couple weeks, Bobby Boucher comes up with a sack, forcing Oklahoma to go 3 and out, and I think that really set the tone for this defense, because soon they were able to come up with another big stop here in the 1st quarter. And they were mostly inspired by Bobby Boucher, who was still mad that Coach Klein was spending time with his mama.
Gatorade not only quenches your thirst better, it tastes better too, idiot.
You're drinking the wrong water.
Gatorade.
H2O.
Gatorade.
H2O.
Water sucks. It really, really sucks. Water sucks.
No, stop
It
saying
really,
that.
really
You don't mean that.
sucks.
You're bad people.
Bobby Boucher was absolutely destroying Oklahoma, and things were looking good for the Longhorns before he comes out the game, and all of a sudden they were down by 10. So here in this 3rd quarter, Bobby knew that he had to try and come up with a play. But it seems like the entire defense is on the same page as they hit the quarterback, and this ball is intercepted. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to go all the way back to the crib, but the offense had still put up a touchdown. And soon by the end of the 3rd quarter, on another 3rd down, Bobby had rushed off the edge for his 3rd sack of the game. A huge play that not only gives the offense the ball back, but is also his 10th sack of the season. Shout out to Bobby, because if it wasn't for him, the quarterback wouldn't be so petrified that he was throwing Stevie Wonder-ass passes, as the Longhorns get another pick that brings them deep into red zone territory. But unfortunately, Texas was only able to get 3 points, so Bobby took it upon himself to get his 4th sack of the game. This dude Bobby forced a fumble that almost got his offense the ball back, and it's really too bad that they didn't, because soon Oklahoma, just like Alabama a few weeks ago, was running right up that Texas Longhorn defense, taking this one all the way to the end zone for a touchdown that puts them up 7 late in this game. And after this Texas offense was not able to put up points, they take their 2nd loss of this season, dropping this one to their rivals, and it was definitely not a good day for Texas. The only bright side is that Bobby Boucher got to see Vicky Valancourt, and she was making him feel a lot better.
Yes. I appreciate what you're showing me right now.
Despite the loss, though, Bobby had an incredible game, earning himself another SEC Defensive Player of the Week. and at this point in the season he still had a pretty good chance of breaking the single-season sack record. He was just going to have to keep playing well going into the back half of his season, and he definitely planned to going into his next game, which should be an easy one, as the Longhorns are taking on unranked Syracuse. Now, it was not long into this game before Bobby would come up with a sack, getting off to a great start in this game by putting Syracuse behind the sticks. And this seemed like it was going to be the theme all throughout this game, because on another drive on third down, Bobby just sheds off this tackle and gets to the quarterback for his second sack of the game, definitely bringing a lot of momentum towards the Longhorns as they would eventually be up 13-3 in the second half. Things begin to change a little bit here in the third quarter though, because after Bobby drops this pick, the defensive coordinator decides to take Bobby out, and they did not put him back in until Syracuse was down at the goal line, and they were pretty easily getting across for their first touchdown of the game. And the only thing that made it worse was the fact that the Texas offense had turned the ball over down at their own goal line, giving Syracuse another opportunity here as it got to a 4th and goal, but they were not able to convert. And it turns out that this was actually enough to get Texas another W, as they somehow closed this game out 15-10. And the Waterboy had dominated another team with 9 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. The Waterboy was already having a better season than he had the previous year, and he still had hopefully 5 games left on his schedule if he can get to an SEC championship. But he knew the only way Texas could get there is if they kept their win streak alive, which was definitely going to be a challenge as they head on the road against 15th ranked Tennessee. Now early on, Tennessee was doing a great job moving themselves upfield towards the red zone, but they would eventually get pushed to a third down where Bobby Boucher is there to make a play, bringing the QB down to the ground and forcing them to settle for 3, bringing us to a 7-3 lead here in the second quarter. And unfortunately for Tennessee, they began making a lot of mistakes like this interception. A big pick by Jonah Williams, and it now looks like Texas has complete control going into halftime, at least until Tennessee had dotted up this defense and went right downfield for an easy touchdown. Now bringing this lead a little bit closer, but Texas would extend it once again, taking us here to a third down where Tennessee was easily able to convert this, picking up some yards that puts him in position to score. But Bobby and his defense was now holding them to a 4th down, and all they had to do was just come up with a stop, but they got scored on, as Tennessee now makes this game 21-19. And although they would miss their 2-point conversion, Texas would turn the ball over in their own territory, bringing us to a 3rd down and goal where thankfully Texas comes up with the stop. And better yet, they score a touchdown to take the lead, which brings us to what could be the last play of the game. That Tennessee quarterback was panicking though and gets sacked for no reason, ultimately leading to Texas taking the 27-22 victory, taking down another top 25 ranked team in the country, and this team looked like it was in great position to have some postseason success. And at this point, Coach Klein and Bobby already talked about how he was clapping Bobby's mama's cheeks, and Bobby had eventually got over it because he was just happy that she was happy. Now at this point in the season, Bobby and his defense were pretty much dominating every single game, whether it be the Waterboy coming up with a sack, or this defense just playing good enough coverage to come up with a pick. This entire side of the field seemed to be on the same page as they came up with a big win against South Carolina. And with only a couple games left in the regular season, Bobby knew that he had to keep up with his schoolwork, and he was doing a great job of doing so. The coaches were definitely happy with him because he spent extra time studying for his exam. He even did so well that his grade got bumped up to a 3.0. And now there weren't many people calling him dumb anymore. But the Longhorn season would continue on as they were now pretty much favorites to make the college football playoffs. They just got to take care of business going into their last 2 games, starting with their next one at home against Missouri. Now, one thing that started to happen a lot, even when it wasn't 4th down, was that Bobby Boucher would end up getting taken off the field. This time it allows Missouri to get downfield to another 3rd and 5, where this time they got stopped, forcing Missouri to kick a field goal while Texas takes the lead with a touchdown, leading us to another 3rd down where although Bobby did not come up with the sack, he forced a bad throw that led to an interception, causing a huge turnover that would allow Texas to take the lead 14-3. Where now at the end of the second quarter, it was Bobby Boucher coming up with his first sack of the game, but immediately he was being taken out. Luckily, it didn't seem like Texas needed his help too much as they were soon up 24-3. Somehow though, Bobby worked around the edge and came up with his second sack of the game, forcing a fumble that is picked up by Missouri, but they are still forced to settle for 3. And all of a sudden, Bobby and his defense just turned it on as they annihilate the quarterback in the end zone, forcing another safety on the season, leading to a 29-6 ball game. But if you thought Bobby Boucher's impact would end right there, you would definitely be mistaken, as the Waterboy comes up with another drive-killing sack on 3rd down, pretty much putting this game away, but Bobby still had to throw off this lineman and truck through another one before helping his teammate come up with his 4th sack of the day. A huge play that not only breaks the quarterback's ribcage, but brings the Longhorns to 9-3 on the season, closing this one out 32-6 with a huge game from Bobby Boucher. He absolutely dominated in this one, especially throughout the second half. I know this quarterback better have nightmares about Bobby. But at this point, Bobby was taking care of his schoolwork before making some well-needed upgrades, because now it is time for Bobby to head into the final game of the regular season. And this had potential to be one of the biggest games of the season, as both teams were fighting for playoff spots, with the Longhorns closing their season out at home against the 6th-ranked team in the country, the LSU Tigers. Now early on in this one, just like they have all season, this Texas defense was coming up with a stop on 3rd down, and they were pretty much dominating all throughout the first quarter as they ended up with a pick in enemy territory. A huge win that should have allowed Texas to at least tie this game up at 3, but unfortunately they couldn't even do that. But on top of that, LSU went on to go pick up a 1st down on their next drive, and immediately after, Bobby Boucher was taken out the game. He did eventually come back in later on to help Texas get a big stop on 3rd down. But soon LSU was driving right back downfield, and for some reason yet again, Bobby was being taken out the game. But at least the offense was making some plays to make this one a little bit closer. Eventually they would even take the lead after halftime. But for some strange reason, even though Bobby was doing a pretty good job, the defensive coordinator continued to take Bobby out the game, and he was forced to watch as LSU took the lead back. Now luckily Texas would find a way to tie this game up, and the defense did a good job at bringing LSU to another 3rd down. But again, Bobby is coming out the game until LSU is down in the red zone. But at least they brought him in on 3rd down where he can help come up with a big stop to hold LSU to 3. But he still has to hope that Texas can get downfield and put up points that can either tie or win this game. But only after a few plays they get stopped and lose the final game of this season, dropping this one 23-20. And this was definitely a pretty bad loss for them to take to an SEC opponent. But it wouldn't be nearly as bad of a loss as they were about to take, because it turns out that Coach Redboy U had something planned up his sleeve all season. As it turns out that he paid the NCAA committee to conduct an investigation on Bobby Boucher, putting out false reports that he's been taking PEDs his entire college career. Now this was bad for multiple reasons, but mostly because now Bobby Boucher was ineligible. And rightfully so, Mr. Coach Klein was pissed. Because not only did Coach Redboy U's quarterback win the Heisman using Coach Klein's green playbook, but Bobby Boucher was having an incredible season, putting up astronomical numbers this year playing both edge rusher and middle linebacker. He dominated pretty much every single game that he played this year, earning himself a bunch of trophies and honors including First Team All-SEC and First Team All-American. He even helped Texas get to the college football playoffs, where unfortunately Bobby would not be eligible to play, because the NCAA was apparently still doing their investigation, and it looked like it would last throughout the entire playoff run. Coincidentally, they would actually finish their investigation the day after Texas gets eliminated from the playoffs. And also in a crazy coincidence, Ohio State would go on to win the national championship. But after a season where Bobby Boucher had established himself as the best defensive player in the country, he and Coach Klein realized that they have to find a way to have a better season next year. Whether it be with Texas or with a different school, they have to try to find a way to take down Coach Redboy U in Ohio State. So the Waterboy and Coach Klein definitely had some things to think about going into the offseason, and some huge decisions to make. But I'll leave those decisions up to you guys. If you want to see a part 3 of the Waterboy, be sure to get this video to 1,000 likes and subscribe to the channel down below. Also be sure to comment down below what else you guys want to see next, and YouTube thinks you'll like one of these other stories until the next one comes out. If you got to this point in the video, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and other than that, I'm gonna catch you guys next time.